Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. Oftentimes in life we find ourselves in situations that we feel are no-win situations. That is, times in which we feel as though no matter what course of action we take, it's not going to lead to a pleasant end. And those times can feel very discouraging. And it might very well be the case that the psalmist is experiencing something similar to that in Psalm 11. There in Psalm 11, starting in verse 1, he says, "In Yahweh I take refuge. How can you say to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain? For behold, the wicked bend the bow. They make ready their arrow upon the string, to shoot in darkness at the upright in heart. If the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do?" What can the righteous do? Here he's saying, how can you say to my soul to flee as a bird to the mountain? Because it's not going to do any good, because even if I were to fly as a bird to the mountain, the wicked bend the bow and they shoot the arrow. Even if I were to fly and try to make my way to the mountain, still I would not be out of the reach of the wicked, is what the psalmist seems to be saying here. In other words, if I stay on the ground, the wicked will attack me. If I were to try to fly to the mountain, they would shoot me down with their arrows, and so on and so forth. And the psalmist seems to be feeling as though there's nothing that he can do really to change the situation. The wicked are just bound and determined to chase him and persecute him and ultimately to destroy him. And again, here we find described for us a situation in which it's a no-win situation. It feels perhaps like a no-win situation. However, the psalmist finds encouragement in Yahweh, in God. The psalm continues in verse 4, "Yahweh is in his holy temple. Yahweh's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids test the sons of men." And then it concludes in verse 7, "For Yahweh is righteous. He loves righteousness. The upright will behold his face." And so this changes things. In the beginning of the psalm, you almost feel as though the psalmist is in a no-win situation. But by the time you end the psalm, it seems to be that the psalmist is in a no-lose situation. In other words, no matter what happens in his circumstances, God was still by his side. God was still going to uphold him, and ultimately he would behold Yahweh's face. And with that knowledge, he knew that no matter what happened to him, it was always going to end up in the right way, in a good way. And we could say the same thing as well. When we find ourselves in those situations where we feel like there is no real pleasant path, there is no real desired destination, we might think that, all is lost, all is hopeless. We can remember that above it all, above our circumstances and our situations here on earth, above all that is a God that we have a wonderful relationship with, and that upholds us in those difficult times, in those dark times, and a God who we will behold his face in the end. And in the end, we will be dwelling in the glory of his countenance and in the joy of his presence. And so really we could say every situation in life is going to end pleasantly. It may not be that it plays out immediately in pleasant ways, but ultimately in the end, we know that God has wonderful and beautiful things awaiting us, and that even if a particular circumstance does end in an unpleasant way, it's not really ending there, that there's more to the story, that our story doesn't end with the end of that particular circumstance, but it continues on in our relationship with God. And he's promised us eternal life. He's promised us a life with him, and where there are no tears, no crying, no suffering, no pain, no heartache, no sickness, none of those things, but that we will live in bliss with him forever. And so when we find ourselves in those dark situations, we can look beyond those circumstances, and we can look above those circumstances and see a God who's reigning above it all, a God who has promised us good things, and that we can trust during those difficult times. So Here's some things we can reflect on and think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.